Good morning. This is Kim Beebe with American Realty, and I wanted to explain to you about who represents whom in a real estate transaction. Well, the first thing you need to know is a broker, we have a minimum duties required by law. We have to treat all parties fair and honestly. We have to put your interest above our interest. We have to inform the client, whether it be the buyer or seller, of any material information, not confidential information, but material information about the property or the transaction. And we have to answer your questions and present any offers, whether they're from the buyer or even on the seller side. So let's talk about seller's representation. This is done through the listing agreement. So when you sign the listing agreement, that agent becomes your representation in that transaction. Once again, we have to treat all parties fair and honestly, but they also have to keep everything confidential and make sure that they are putting your interest above their interest. As an agent for the buyer, this is done really most of the time through a buyer's representation agreement. Once that is signed, that agent has to keep all of your information confidential and they represent you as the buyer. And once again, we have to give those minimum duties above and must inform the buyer of any material information about the property that we know. The last one's a little bit different. It's called an intermediary. And what this is if the agent who has it listed is the same person, the same brokerage that sells it. So there's a difference. You've got your brokerage and then you've got your agent. So if the agent has it listed, then there's two different ways for representation at this point if the buyer comes along. The broker can assign an agent to the buyer and an agent to the seller. At this time, they can give advice and opinions to that buyer and to that seller. Now, if the agent who has it listed gets the buyer and the intermediary, who is the broker, assigns that agent, that same agent, let's call her agent A, to represent the buyer and the seller, they can't give any advice or any opinions at that time. They can only give representation in the sense of just treating you fair and honestly. So you have to decide in that situation, what do you want as a buyer and what do you want as the seller? Do you need help during that process? Do you need help to know what to ask for during inspections, maybe what to offer, what to accept for your home? And we cannot tell on either side, whether we're doing it in the office as the buyer and the seller agent or different agents. We can never tell what you would take for the home or what that buyer would offer for that home or give for that home in the end. All of this has to be in writing. So when you have an intermediary situation, there's a form called an intermediary relationship notice, and that has to be signed by the buyers and sellers to make sure that they agree to what is happening in the transaction. If you have any other questions, I would love to visit with you about that. My number is 979-236-2628. And my name is Kim Beebe, and I hope you have a great day.